If you think winning in dating, business, and life is about raw talent or being born with elite genetics, science has some terrible news for your excuses. The people who end up in the top 0.1% aren't playing a different game. They are following a completely different psychology. In this video, you'll discover 5 scientifically backed rules that quietly separate the people everyone chases from the guys constantly chasing everyone else. The 4th rule feels completely backwards, and the final one is the psychological cheat code almost nobody notices until it's already too late. Rule 1. Stop trying to win people. Start winning yourself. Most men think winning means convincing other people, convincing women to like them, convincing bosses to promote them. Science says you've already lost. One of the strongest findings in psychology is that people who focus entirely on improving what they can actually control, not other people's reactions, perform better, experience less stress, and persist significantly longer. The winners stop trying to control people. They start controlling themselves. I learned this after spending 3 straight months trying to manipulate one woman into liking me. I changed my haircut. I started wearing clothes that made me look like a trendy lumberjack. I pretended to enjoy hot yoga, and even listened to a 3-hour podcast about crystal healing and astrology. By week 3, I could explain my moon sign to a stranger. I still couldn't explain why she left me on red. Nothing worked. She still wasn't interested. Looking back, it's almost impressive how much energy I burned trying to edit someone else's opinion instead of improving my own life. So I gave up. Not on dating, on chasing. I joined a boxing gym, started reading again, and learned to cook something more advanced than a frozen pizza at 2 a.m. A few months later, my phone vibrated. Guess who texted me? Her. By then, I wasn't nearly as interested anymore, because somewhere along the way, I had accidentally won the only battle that actually mattered. The battle against the deeply insecure version of me that believed happiness depended on someone else's approval. The moment you stop desperately trying to conquer other people, you finally start conquering yourself. The next rule makes people wonder why you're suddenly impossible to ignore. Rule 2. Become slightly harder to get. Psychologists have been studying the scarcity principle for decades. People naturally place a vastly higher value on things that seem limited. That includes your time, your attention, and your availability. I learned this lesson the hard way. A few years ago, I matched with a woman I genuinely liked. She sent me exactly one message. Hey. My brain reacted like NASA had just announced they found intelligent alien life, and it was single. Within half a second, I had already imagined our entire future together. The massive wedding, 2 kids, matching holiday sweaters, and retiring to a little villa in Italy. I had picked out the dog's name. The dog didn't exist yet. Neither did the relationship. Every single time she texted, boom, instant reply. I was running a 24-hour, high-speed customer support hotline for exactly one woman. My response time was so fast it should have come with a tracking number. I thought, wow, she is definitely going to see how interested I am. In her head, she was probably thinking, this guy definitely has hidden cameras inside my walls. Then something unexpected happened. My life actually got busy. I started working more. I got serious about the gym and launched new projects. Suddenly, I would reply 3 hours later. Sometimes the next morning, not because I was playing manipulative games, but because I actually had a life worth returning to. Something weird happened. Our conversations got better, longer, funnier, and more playful. My attention had quietly become valuable. Scarcity by itself doesn't create attraction. A meaningful, busy life creates scarcity. People do not respect someone who is available every waking second. They respect someone whose attention actually feels earned. But there's one habit that destroys your value even faster than desperation, and almost every man does it dozens of times a week without even realizing it. Rule 3. Stop explaining yourself. There is something fascinating clinical psychologists have noticed about human communication. High-status people rarely feel the need to defend every single decision they make. Low-confidence people do it all the time. I can't make it because, or I only said that because every sentence turns into a closing argument at a murder trial. One time, I had to cancel a date because I had a massive project deadline. Instead of simply texting, I can't make it tonight, I sent a message so incredibly long it needed chapter headings and a table of contents. I explained my workload, my calendar, my stress level, and threw in the migration patterns of Canadian geese just to make my alibi absolutely airtight. Halfway through typing, I completely forgot what I was even apologizing for. At one point, I was explaining a scheduling conflict I was pretty sure I had invented on the spot. She replied with exactly 3 words. No worries, LOL. Only 3 words. Meanwhile, I had drafted enough written material to qualify for a 4-part Netflix true crime documentary. I was one text away from mailing her a signed apology and a fruit basket. Actually, confident people don't over-explain. Not because they're rude, because they trust themselves. And confidence has a strange, magnetic side effect. It is completely contagious. The exact moment you stop begging people to approve your decisions, they immediately start assuming your decisions were worth trusting in the first place. But the next rule is the one almost nobody has the stomach for. Rule 4. Make failure your favorite hobby. Winning comes exclusively through losing. You just have to do it faster and smarter. Psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades studying what actually separates extraordinary performers from incredibly average ones. She found that people with a growth mindset don't treat failure as proof they're broken. They treat it as information. Most guys get rejected once at a bar and immediately think, well, I guess I'll die alone in a basement surrounded by 12 stray cats. Winners ask themselves one question instead. What exactly did this teach me? I once confidently walked up to a beautiful woman in a bookstore. I felt completely relaxed. I had rehearsed the absolute perfect opening line in my head all morning. I even practiced saying it out loud in the mirror, which is a great way to make sure you look insane before you look confident. I smiled, confidently opened my mouth, and at that exact moment, my brain completely disconnected from reality. Instead of smoothly asking, "Do you like reading?" I asked a deeply strange question. Can you read?" Dead silence. She slowly looked down at the massive hardcover book in her hands, then looked back at me and gently whispered, "Yeah, I learned a while ago." At that exact moment, I seriously considered legally changing my name and entering the witness protection program. I would have accepted a new identity in a town with no bookstores. But I learned something incredibly important that day. Embarrassment only sticks around when your ego fiercely fights it. The moment you allow yourself to just be embarrassed instead of resisting it, something changes. Every single awkward failure makes your fear a little smaller and your resilience a little stronger. But there's one final rule. A rule almost nobody notices. The rule that quietly ties together everything you've heard so far. Rule 5. Become the calmest person in every room. This is the ultimate cheat code. Psychologists call it emotional regulation. The top 0.1% almost never have the loudest voice in the room. They simply have the strongest nervous system. I once watched a speaker give a high-stakes corporate presentation that looked less like a business meeting and more like the opening scene of a terrifying apocalypse movie. First, his presentation clicker completely died. Then the microphone quit working. Then, the building's fire alarm started violently screaming. At that point, I was just waiting for a live dinosaur to crash through the drywall. The guy sitting next to me had already quietly started packing his bag to evacuate. Instead of sweating and having a very public panic attack, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, this is all part of the immersive live demonstration. From this point on, the presentation becomes highly interactive." It felt like watching someone calmly order a coffee while the building slowly filled with smoke. The entire room burst into massive laughter. Just like that, all the tension completely evaporated. Afterward, dozens of people walked over to shake his hand. Not because his slide deck was flawless, because he stayed entirely calm when the reality around him was actively falling apart. He had turned a total disaster into the most memorable talk of the entire day, and he did it without changing a single slide. Success is not about having a perfect bulletproof plan. It is about keeping your emotional balance when that plan spontaneously catches on fire. The top 0.1% do not try to desperately control the room. They control themselves, and somehow the entire room just ends up following them.